alaikum and peace and blessings to you and your family. Welcome to another episode of In the Spotlight Presents. As you can see, tonight we are featuring some good things today. We have our sister Tanesha X, who is here as owner of Cutie Pies and Cakes.
Correct.
Okay, Sister Tanesha, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Let's start from the beginning. How long you been doing this?
Right around, I would say 18 years.
18 years.
18
wow.
years.
And it's so funny because I remember it seemed like when you got started and it didn't seem that long.
Right.
Praise be to Allah. Now, what did you start out doing?
So I first started baking bean pies.
Okay.
I was at one of the sisters' house, Sister Stacy, when she lived here, that lives now in Chicago. And I was over her house and we were dibbling dabbling. She was a good cook, a baker. And she started baking. So I just learned. She sort of taught me how to bake the bean pie. And she baked one and gave me the recipe. Right. So I went home and baked. Now, you know the old saying is, if somebody teaches you or you get a recipe, you're not going to never do it like the other person. But when I shared it with her, she was like, it's better than mine. She was like, wow. So she was impressed that I was able to take what she had given me and perfect it, I suppose. And she encouraged me. So it started there.
Praise be to Allah. And I can say that your bean pies, I remember it would just be like the excitement on a Sunday. Like, Sister Tanesha's bean pies are here. So now we move from the bean pies. We move into cakes, cupcakes, and etc.
Yes.
But you're not per se a trained baker.
Correct.
So it was really self-taught.
Yes. Yes.
This goes back to what we were talking about on the show in regard to using a skill and a talent. So you basically took a skill and talent and created a whole business.
Yes. I remember the very first cake I did was for my son's graduation, his open house, which was, I did a sheet cake. Mm-hmm. And this was 2006. So that was the very first cake that I had done for someone that I was going to present.
Right.
I probably had did a couple at home and messed up or whatever.
Right.
But it took me literally about 4 days, it seemed, to do this cake. One, because I guess I'm a perfectionist, as they say. So it was for my son, and it had to be the best.
Right.
So it was a sheet cake, which I took 4 quarter sheets. Each quarter sheet was a different flavor. I had a banana, I had a lemon, I had a chocolate, and a marble. Right. So I think I had this grand idea and didn't really factor in how long it was going to take me to produce.
Right.
So I remember, and on top of that, he graduated from Lansing. So I had to start the cake here in Detroit and then transport everything to Lansing. It was a disaster. The cake turned out okay.
Right.
It turned out how I envisioned.
Right.
It was, had its little quirks here and, imperfections, but all in all, it was good. Everybody raved about it. I put his pictures on there, like baby picture and senior year picture and all that. And it turned out great, And so, that was one of the first cakes that I did, but it took so long, and now I can do that same cake in like an hour.
So with that said, I'm glad you brought that up, because with anything, a lot of times people will see the end result.
Yes.
And we will be dropping pictures of your cakes, and you do phenomenal jobs. And you present to celebrities.
Yes.
You have presented to the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. So obviously the presentation and the look, it takes time.
It does.
But it took time to get to even that point.
Yes. And I think, I grew up in a family that was, I had some artists. My mother could draw and paint. My uncles were, they were great painters. Could also draw. I used to do sketch, like in high school or whatever. So I had some artistry in my background, I would say. So I think that helps me and gives me a keen eye for design, cakes. I envision, I don't think I've ever done the same cake twice.
Wow.
And often, for me, what works for me is, is when I sit down to the cake, it's like my canvas or my palette. Sometimes, most times, I don't know what direction I'm going to go in.
Right.
I may know a color scheme, a general idea of what the client wants, but it comes together right when I'm sitting there. And that's why sometimes it takes me longer than I may want it to take, is because it's forming in my mind as I'm creating. Yes. And it works that way for me.
And we really, I'm going to make sure the pictures are there for them to see, because the creativity is never disappointing. It is always absolutely beautiful. But I'm glad you pointed out it takes time, though. So if you start tomorrow deciding you want to be a baker, you're not going to produce perfection immediately.
Exactly.
These are skills. What do you say to those who are thinking, man, I do bake. I love to bake. How can I take my cakes to the next level? What are some of those hurdles that you would say beware of, watch out for? Because these things do happen.
Well, I think for a lot of people, because if you look at social media now, it's like everybody's doing cake. When I first started, it was nothing like this. Well, social media wasn't like it is now either. But I would say really hone your skill. Look at class. That's something I didn't do. I probably could be further along had I stopped and took classes here and there and really learned. I would say get those papers, because you learn, baking's a science. And you learn so much. And when you start out and you really don't take a certain course, there's some things you miss. So you get them on the back end, like I learned, but I could have avoided some of the mishaps and the pitfalls that I went into had I done, took a little different path. So I would say in anything, educate yourself. That's the biggest thing that stands out to me, is just educating yourself. Talk to other people who've done it. I follow a lot of other cake people that are in the business who do amazing work. And oftentimes they are available to you. If you reach out to them, if you send them a message, they are so helpful. It seems that the cake business is going into so many reels. They're willing to assist or talk to you or give you feedback. So there's cake groups out there. You get a plethora of information just being in some of the cake groups. So that's what I would
connect with those that's in this field. And like you said, now you see cake shows. Shows showing that artistic design in the cakes, learning the basics of making a cake. So you do see it more. Now, with you and your pies, your cakes, what would be some of the advantages that you would say that you have saw just personally that have made you say, I'm glad I'm in this business. I'm glad I do this?
Well, of course, getting to meet the most little spark, that was, I did a cake I was asked to do a cake. I think it came through Chicago, but it trickled down to my husband and then to me. And it was his 80th, I believe. That was the 80th birth celebration that we did here at Reverend Wendell Anthony's church. And being able to, it's always so interesting because you never know how those things are going to go.
Right. And
so I'm thinking I'm just going to bring the cake, hand it off to someone who's going to take it to them. He won't even know who made the cake. It's just a cake here. We don't know where this cake came from.
Here's the cake, sir.
So, we go to the lecture. He's speaking. And so, but when it was just about over, they whisked me to the back. And I'm like, wow, this is how this goes. And so I was told to meet, I was going to be able to speak with the minister in the office. Now, the funny story, this is so funny to me. And it's like yesterday. This was 10 years ago? It's so funny because I'm taking into the office, Reverend Wendell Anthony's office, where he and the minister are having a conversation. I'm sitting there privy to the conversation. And I feel like I shouldn't be listening to the conversation. It's like, does somebody want to take me out?
I'm just a baker. Do anyone know I'm just a baker?
Am I supposed to be hearing this? Because I can act like I don't hear, I don't see nothing, And it just was a private. It was a private conversation between the two of them that I just was, set there. So, and they didn't wrap it up. They knew I was there. And they proceeded to talk maybe 10 minutes. And so when other, people started to come in I presented him 2 cakes at that time, and one was the violin. Yes. And at the time he was doing the time that must be, what must be done. So it was my husband's bright idea when I was doing the violin cake, because the minister is a trained violinist. My husband said, you should do a Quran cake. And you should put the time on it. Right. And I'm like, you think so? Because everybody's like, making a cake in the shape of a violin was like the wow. Right? So, following my husband's advice, I did the Quran cake, open book cake with the chapter and the ayat. So he comes over to the table, and both cakes are sitting side by side. And I think Sister Andrea, she's doing the photography. Right. She's taking pictures of the cake. There's some other dignitaries in there, and they're all wowing over the violin cake. The minister is wowed over the Quran cake.
Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah.
And so he grabs my hand, and you're so nervous. You don't know what to do, right? And he grabs my hand, and he looks at me, and he says, Tanesha, Tanesha, Tanesha. 3 times. I thought I was gonna faint.
Start doing all the science of 3.
Right. And he just thanked me. He thanked me for both, but he said the violin is nice. He said, but this is what I want. And it just was like, my husband was so right.
So shout out to our brother Kevin from Mosque number 1.
So that was the highlight. Every now and then when that photo comes up in my memory, I always post it because it seems like yesterday. And it was, I just was so blessed to be able, and honored to be able to bake not 1, but 2 cakes.
Right. Alhamdulillah. So now, for those who, I know you do your baking from home. Yes. And I'm only bringing this point up to say everyone don't have to think they have to be in a brick and mortar. Correct. There's that option and or working from home. Yes. So the opportunity to work from home also allows you to be with your family, pursue going back to school. So how has that transition been, being mom, wife, the baker at home, the demands of baking? How is that transition for you?
Well, it was really good because I've been back working outside of the home for about 3 years now. Okay. So being, stay-at-home mom, able to do my business and pursue some other things like going back to school to get my degrees, it was a great opportunity to be able to do that. I don't know if I would have been able to do it had I been working outside the home as well, and do so well with my degrees. Right. So that was a blessing. It sort of just, the way everything folded or, came out was just perfect. It just happened how it was supposed to happen. And so by me being at home, I wanted to take my business to another level. Yeah. But I knew there were some things I did not know. Right. I knew how to bake a cake. I knew how to decorate a cake. But I didn't understand or know enough for me to be comfortable with opening up a storefront, and running, the everything that goes into running a storefront. So my first thought was, maybe I should go back to school. Right. So the first thing I did was go back to school for my bachelor's degree. And I was terrified. I hadn't been in school in 20 years, and I had the thoughts of not doing well, and, what if I don't, what if this happens? And then the time that it takes to do the work, you know? And so I know I still have this business. I still have small children at the time. And would I, accomplish what I'm trying to accomplish? And I'm sort of goal-oriented, and I'm kind of, I compete against myself. And so I know, back when I went to high school, I did well. And when I did go to college, I went to junior college in Lansing, I did well. So I always try to compare myself to the last time I did something. Right. So I didn't want to embark on this degree and didn't do well And then I'm like, dang, why did I do that? Then I would be on myself. I should have never went back to school. I should have never,
Right.
So I was dealing with those kind of internal emotions. So, but anyway, I jumped right on it. I went, enrolled in an entrepreneurial bachelor's degree with a concentration on entrepreneurship and excelled.
Yes, you did.
Graduated like 3.8.
Right.
And, top of my class, honors society, international honor society, all of that, right? And so I'm like, I shocked myself,
right? Because
I was able to still manage. Now, everything I didn't manage well. There was some shortcomings. It had to be because I started giving so much to the school. I didn't cook as much.
Right.
I wasn't able to attend the mosque as much.
Right.
So there was some things that I had to sacrifice to be able to do what I was trying to accomplish. But what it also gave me was I was home for so long. When I was going to school and I got to talk to other adults in a different type of setting, I began to really enjoy that outlet. I didn't just talk to my children all day like I did. And we need that sometimes.
Yes.
Sometimes you don't know what you're missing until you do something different and you recognize, wow, this is something I needed.
Doors.
Yeah, I needed this kind of engagement. I needed intellectual engagement on that type of level. But anyway, I completed that degree in 2014. So the school I went to, University of Phoenix, they also offer internal scholarships. And I decided to check our dashboard, if you will, school dashboard. So I graduated in October of 2014. In February of 2015, which was just a few months later, I checked the board and saw that there was a full ride scholarship for your master's degree.
Oh, wow.
So I'm reading all the requirements and everything, and it says deadline was the very next day. I hadn't checked it before. So now I'm like, oh, wow. So now I'm looking at all the requirements. 3 essays, 3 letters of reference. And I'm thinking, I have one day. So my mind was like, you can't do that. But the other part of me was like, you should try.
Let's go for it. Let's see what happens.
Right. Let's see how we can do this. So I called a couple people that I happen to be friends with that are notables in the city of Detroit who were able to give me the kind of reference that I needed.
Right.
Shout out to Gail Perry Mason, who was one of them.
Our sister.
Right. And then the school gave you 3 different subjects to write on. So you couldn't even pick your own subject. So I'm looking at the topics that they're giving me and I'm like, wow, they were all really, intricate, something that you really had to put some time and effort into. And I knew I had done well in writing before, but this is 3 essays and it had to be like 4 pages each. So
right. A lot of requirements.
And we're talking about like 24 hours. So the deadline was 11:59 the following day. I submitted everything at 11:59. I kid you not. It was 11:59. I hit the submit, and I was trying to skim and read and edit. So I had everything done before the 11:59, but I was taking that time,
double checking.
Yes, but I'm right on the money. The scholarship, they were accepting 200 applicants. They were awarding 20 people full rides for the master's degree. And guess who was one of them?
Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar.
So I was able to get my master's degree free of charge. I had to pay for nothing.
Allahu Akbar.
And that experience was eye-opening as well. And again, more trepidation. I was nervous because then when I was awarded, they said I had to enroll within 180 days in the program.
Right.
I didn't know that.
Right.
So now either I forfeit this opportunity or I go right back to school when I wasn't even in the mindset of going back to school. I had just finished, the bachelor's degree. I wasn't trying to go back right then, but I did. And again, I did better in my master's degree than I did in my bachelor's degree.
What did you get your master's in?
My master's degree was in business administration, so an MBA.
One of the things when I first joined the nation, the minister said, I thank you for all those who helped me, but I need more qualified help. So I need you to look at your nation, see where there is areas that need improving, and go and educate and improve yourself and help me. But I need qualified help. And exactly what you're saying, you get the opportunity to be home and start a business, but now you get the opportunity to now go and educate yourself so that even if this is going well, but there's a whole nother door opening up for you, that Tanesha used this at the level it was needed at that time. Absolutely. But now she can go to another level with the skills to help your nation, your family, yourself.
Absolutely.
On to the next level. So it doesn't have to always be what opened the door and we stay there. This may just be for that moment. Or they say the season for that particular thing. Would you agree with that?
I wholeheartily agree.
Yeah.
Yes. And because it gives you, the option. That's what we don't have sometimes is options.
Right.
And people talk about having money, not having money, and people the greed of money and love of money in this world. But having money just gives you options.
Right.
And so having other skill sets and degrees, things that you know how to do and do well, it gives you options. And so if I want to take this and pursue something else, I can transition and I can pivot very easily into something else. I can go into administration.
Right.
I can work in healthcare. I can work in banking. Right. I can work, I can do so
the door
much.
is open
The
now.
door, exactly.
And that's needed when you're building a nation, when you're building yourself, and when you're showing your children. Don't leave no door unturned.
Exactly.
Every door is an opportunity for you to take yourself to that next level. So now, with where you are right now, and with all that you have seen done, what would be your advice if you had to say to someone else who's saying, I do love to bake. I would love to open the door to this idea. What would be your advice to someone who's coming into the field of baking?
Just, again, educate yourself.
Excellent.
Know what you're getting into. It's time consuming, especially if you are self-employed. And a lot of people, they don't really understand, or they lump business owners, self-employment, entrepreneur all into the same thing. And there are some clear differences. And so just know that when you're self-employed, that's what self means. You're doing the work.
Right.
And so it can be grueling when it's you who have to turn out a product, especially a product that has a shelf life.
Right.
So, when you think in terms of vending events, when people come and set up their events, they come with their totes and everything of their product. They can put that product out, and then they can pack that product up and take it back and store it. With cakes, you cannot.
Right.
If you don't sell, that's product that you lost.
Right.
And so you have to figure out what I'm going to do. If you've got 20 cakes or 20 pies or whatever you have to allot for the time it took you to bake it.
Right.
The cost, everything that's involved in that product. And so when you are going into business or a cake business per se, know that all those things are at play there. And so you really have to have a target of what you're trying to do. If you're going to just do cakes, there's one point, at one time I was thinking about I should just do wedding cakes. Just stop doing all the other cakes and just focus on wedding cakes. That way, you make more money with the wedding cakes. They're more time consuming, but it's kind of worth it in the end. But I would suggest someone do that. Really look at what they want. Do they want to run the gamut of all types of cakes? Do you want to do cake pops, cupcakes? Right. You have to, I think that's the smart thing to do is focus on one thing. If you decide to branch out at some later point, make sure you have the people in place to help you do that, to help you grow. Because it can be a lot of work. There's many nights that I was up 2 and 3 days.
Right.
At a time. Wow. No sleep. Crying.
Over the cake.
Mad. Right. Frustrated. All of that.
Right.
I said yeah when I should have said no.
She knows she don't need these cupcakes. Right. But you know what I thank you for? Busting up the illusion is easy. You know, sometimes in this society, because everything is so quick and so fast, we look and see, oh, that's how Jay-Z started. Now he's a billionaire. I can do this in a day. And a lot of times we forget their steps. And there is work. And it's not overnight easy. But it is possible.
Yes.
And you're an example of that.
Thank you.
So I thank you. And as we get ready and tear up some of these desserts, I am so appreciative of you.
Yes, ma'am.
So again, we thank you for tuning in for another episode of In the Spotlight Present. And we pray to Allah that you have a wonderful evening. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you.
You're welcome.